Welcome to the Capstone Conversation, where you learn about what's happening in the greater East Bay. I am your host, Jared Asch. Today, we will be talking about print media, news media, and how it's evolving within our communities here in the East Bay. Today, I am joined by Barney Fonzi from Diablo Magazine and Jeremy Walsh with Embarcadero Media. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me. Jeremy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the publication and your background? And then we'll have Barney do the same.
Sure. I'm a Bay Area native, born in Vallejo, grew up in Benicia, was the editor-in-chief of the PAW, Benicia High School, for 3 years. Went to school for journalism, American University in Washington, D.C.
Go Eagles.
Nice to see the men make the tournament this year. And then coming out of school, slim pickings in 2010 for journalism jobs. Even then, I worked for 2.5 years in Lake County Record B in Lakeport, Northern California. And then in November 2013, moved back to the Bay Area, got on here at Embarcadero Media. In the East Bay Division, we have the Pleasanton Weekly, which is in print and online. We have DanvilleSanRamon.com and LivermoreVine.com. 3 publications in the Tri-Valley, and as Jared mentioned, we have 4 publications on the Mid-Peninsula. The Palo Alto Weekly is the flagship of the organization. The big news for us, in the beginning of 2024, we converted to nonprofit. We were a legacy journalism business and converted to 100% 501c3 just about 1.5 years ago.
Thanks. And Barney?
Yeah, I too am a local guy. Grew up in the Bay Area, grew up in Pittsburgh High School, and went to college at UCLA, lived down in Los Angeles for about 10 years. Then moved back up here. Interestingly enough, I wasn't a journalism or media major. I was an econ major in school and worked for Bank of America when I got out of school, and then decided to transition to something different. And at the time, Diablo was just a fledgling publication, just getting started. Started a few years ago before that by Steve Rivera, and joined the business and kind of learned everything from the inside out. And I've been here, be 40 years next month, so a little bit. And the magazine's 45 years old now, and it's our foundation, the foundation of the company. We actually do a number of other things. We do Napa Sonoma Magazine. We publish up in wine country. We do visitors guides for the Visit Walnut Creek, for the Visit Tri-Valley. We work with them on their visitor guides. And then half of our business is custom publishing, where we do publishing projects, marketing projects for outside firms, work with some law schools in the travel industry and also in the healthcare industry, varied in our product lineup.
In 40 years that you worked there, talk about how you've seen the publication evolve and keep up with new technology in that time.
Well, it's been interesting because you're right. Computer in media didn't really even exist too much back in when I first started. We had a IBM computer sitting in the corner that no one really knew how to use, so no one used it. But everything was back. That was back in the days of typesetting and all of that sort of stuff being a manual process. But it slowly evolved where you saw it primarily in the backroom side of things, not so much with community involvement, with the technology to produce actual magazines, and where things were moving from a typesetting environment to digital files and all of that, making it much more efficient from our process through the printing process. And probably 6-7 years into it, we started to integrate computers where email was becoming a thing. And I remember us thinking about that. And it was like, okay, how is this going to integrate into our business, and what is it really going to change it? And hindsight being 2020, it's like amazing what the difference was, both in communications with clients, with generating stories, all parts of our business. And I would say the final part of it really has been now with the transformation into digital and how you integrate online outreach to our readers and translating not only the publication, but continual content generation to engage people on an ongoing basis. Diablo is a monthly, it didn't start as a monthly, but it was a monthly magazine. Now we're 8 times a year, but you always have to have touch points with the readership base. Having the digital offerings opens a lot of new opportunities, new doors, takes a lot of resources though as well. You have to have specialties in the digital environment and able to pull off what it is that you want to do.
So, Jeremy, we were hearing Barney talk about the bring in of email and just how that shifted in the business. You've come up at a different time in the media space where email and Twitter and all that stuff were just a part of your daily life, probably even in high school and social media. How are you seeing journalism utilize those tools?
When I first signed up for Facebook, you had to have a college account. We've really seen an interesting direction in terms of what Barry was talking about with outreach to readers and engaging sources. That's been a great boon for us, I think, especially certain platforms are better than others. Nextdoor, your Facebook, rants and raves. You'd be surprised how many leads, good leads, and some non-good leads that you get through from those sources that you might not otherwise have. And I think an interesting observation too is we're even getting to a phase where the newest crop of journalists coming out of school aren't as familiar with things like email and internet research, or even the notion of cold calling a source if you have their phone number, if they're not getting back to you. It's just interesting whether it's new reporters or just having to walk through interns, those steps that maybe seem second nature to us in a way that maybe some of my mentors would have had to do for things from the strategies from the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was talking to somebody I know who does law enforcement consulting, and I was asking recently, like, about all the police, inappropriate police behavior, beatings, and things like that. And I was asking, like, historically, has this always gone on? And he said one of the biggest differences is today. Yes, it has gone on. People didn't have video cameras in their pockets to record all of this information. And based on what you said, I gotta watch what I post on Nextdoor now.
And I think using the phrase information is key right now. There's information, what's real, what's misinformation, what's disinformation. The way I present it or play dumb when I encourage my staff when they're just reaching out and asking questions about leads. We see sensitive leads online is espousing that as much as what we like to do for the community is dispel rumor as much as confirm fact. But you see these conversations go off the rails sometimes on these social media platforms with people you trust in the community or just sources you recognize. And you like to be the voice that maybe jumps into that rants and rage thread and say, hey, this is what we found, or just commentaries on maybe we post a story of ours on a social media platform and then there's comments on that just to write the record, so to speak.
It's so important if I can jump into that.
Yeah.
Jeremy's company, Embarcadero Publishing, brings to the table, and ourselves are trusted brands. And I think that's something that's getting a little bit lost in it's not new news, but everything that comes across the internet, people jump onto and believe, or so many do. And they're really looking for some of the trusted brands and the information sources that they've had in the community over the course of time to really help right the ship, as Jeremy says, because it's like, what's true and what isn't? It's so hard to tell nowadays.
When we talked to Dan Ashley of ABC7, he said that people were turning back to local news sources because they felt like they could trust what they had to share more than they would go to the cable news or the national publications. And you guys are as local as you get, right? You're on the ground in these communities talking to these school and city leaders and nonprofits.
Absolutely. I think the local niche has remained fairly strong. The business is tough, or at least in my observation. It's changed a lot over the course of time. But the niche that we both share, Jeremy's group and ours, is that local touch. There are things out there that are purportedly local, but it's oftentimes franchises of bigger organizations. They have their toe in the water, but they're really not diving into the local environment like our organizations have for so many years.
Jeremy, anything else to add on that?
The other thing that came to mind when you described boots on the ground, which is very important, I like to urge our staff to find opportunities to use all five senses in the field to report. I think that's so critical. But the other aspect is where we are in the Tri-Valley and our sister publications on the peninsula, our reporters don't live in those communities, right? They have to commute there just like others. We have not only editorial folks, administrative folks, and otherwise that are based in those communities or grew up there, but we do have also an angle into what it's like for, people who work in those communities who might still want to know what's going on in Pleasanton. We're able to have that perspective of, frankly, what it's like to have to commute to town or live so far away from that community and still be aware of what's going on. And those are great insights as well. It's not all just about sharing what the resident or the family living in the house, Ruby Hill or something has to say. There's a whole lot more of the people and experience that make up life in the Tri-Valley.
Yeah. How has the business model changed? Jeremy, you talked about the paper's decision, the parent company's decision to become a C3 organization, possibly so you can take in donations and things as well to offset advertising revenue. Can you talk about that decision, how that's going so far?
Yeah, it's going pretty well. We're in our second year. 2024 was very near, maybe a little better than break even on the advertising side. We had political advertising revenue, but Jared, you're right that the phrase we're using internally is a way to extend the runway. And this was the best path in terms of opening up a legitimate, tangible revenue stream. We did have a component before when we were a business to sell sponsorships to certain big organizations or maybe key individuals in the community, but those were just contributions to another business, no tax deductible component. And understanding what's going on in the landscape, not only new news websites or news groups forming as nonprofits or some legacy organizations transitioning to nonprofit. That was something that we are certainly on the shareholder side of the corporation. And then also internally, we did have an existing foundation before that did not have the journalism side, but all three sides arrived at that as the best opportunity to sustain and thrive into the future.
What is the percentage of revenue coming in through the nonprofit status versus ad sales?
Yeah, it's certainly still being built out. But
what's the goal?
I would think the goal is to get around quarter to a third of the revenue opportunity there. So our main, as you say, is sales, traditional advertising, display some, but real estate is a big revenue generator for us. Real estate advertising on both the East Bay and the peninsula. You think about it, the affluent communities we tend to be in, what these homes go for. The realtors recognize, real estate agents recognize the value of our products from that perspective to their business. But again, still sales, print and digital are the main revenue stream. We have memberships, which are paid subscriptions to get beyond our paywall online. And I believe in our current budget, sort of donations, and it is similar to where memberships are in terms of what the budget expectation is.
And Barney, how are you guys still relying on ad sales, print and digital?
Yeah, that's really where our revenue comes. It's been our model. When we first started, the decision was made to reach a broad mass of the desired households in the market. It was developing, there was a lot of growth that was going to be happening. And the desire was to get into those households because we saw them as attractive readers, consumers, and the advertising piece of it was where all the revenues came from primarily. And subscription model didn't matter so much. It was more important to reach the readers and put out a good product and get them engaged with it rather than trying to derive a lot of money from a subscription type publication. Our model was a little bit different. And that's been primarily where our revenues are driven on the magazine part of our business. Our custom publishing is fee for service. We charge a fee to go and produce a publication or content, depending what it is for an outside client. And then we augment that with sponsorships of different events over time that we do. There's revenue there, but still the lion's share is the advertising part of it. That fluctuates with whatever's happening in the economy and the market and everything else. Like Jeremy has mentioned, real estate's a big component for us as well. Healthcare and wealth management probably are our strongest verticals in the magazine.
It's interesting time evolution of both your publications, right? You used to both compete with the Contra Costa Times in some way. Now that's merged into the East Bay Times, which is mostly produced out of San Jose, right? It's less competition in terms of the print ad space, but you're also competing more with the social media platforms and other sources, right?
Yeah.
I would say, generally speaking, you're on the right track as it applies to us. But there are, in certain of our markets, we do have competitor publications, right? There's the Independent in Livermore. They do coverage of Pleasanton, Livermore, Dublin, just like we do, but they're branded in Livermore. We started a Livermore Vine in 2021. Of course, Palo Alto, the Palo Alto Weekly has daily news there. There are still that local competitors, for lack of a better word, on the journalistic side, and certainly advertising as well. You're competing on that side with some of the same pots. But we do, again, on the journalism side, we still have to be aware. East Bay Times still does have coverage presence in our area. We have to be able to meet the expectation for their on the big stories where they have helicopter coverage and more resources than we do to do certain things for those major stories. Competition is healthy for the success of everybody, the industry, the journalists, and the readers. So it is a shame to see that dip, but we look to rise to the occasion on the journalism side when others are covering the same stories we are.
I would agree. Seeing competition go away is not a good thing. And there's one part of you that's, oh yeah, wow, relief they're not out there fighting for the dollar with us anymore. But really and truly, the more competitors that are out there, it shows a more vital and healthy industry. And I was really sad to see the Contra Costa Times go away and become part of the East Bay Times, and now be so many of the stories that come through are AP stories that are picked up. And it's okay, that local voice, and no offense to the Times at all, but it's just a different animal today than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, where really strong local voice. And there were a couple other magazines that were in the market. We're a little different than Jeremy's publication because we're the magazine type, not as much the daily news or the cutting news stories, more lifestyle stories. And there were other publications that used to be more vital and in the market that have just disappeared. And that kind of, you don't like to see that either. And some of the money's gone to digital dollars. Some of it, I think, after the recession was reset. We saw businesses that used to advertise that, for better or for worse, just cut back and stopped advertising. What's been interesting to me is more recently, and being that our roots are traditional media, is that some of it seems to be bouncing back. I'm seeing more competition for billboards than there was a few years ago. I'm hearing more radio, local radio advertising, that businesses on radio that did not use that channel quite so much 5 years ago. So I think there's a little bit of broadening, that everything is digital, that traditional media also still has strength, especially in local markets. And that's encouraging.
You guys both have different publications. Can you, and types and audiences, can you share the percentage of online versus people who are looking at the hard copies?
With ours, it's still the print publication. If you're talking Diablo Magazine is the core strength. We're more a coffee table type publication. We've always tried to maintain a certain quality in terms of the look, obviously, and the editorial quality of the magazine. We print 30,000 copies and distribute 30,000 copies each issue. It's a good sized publication number. But I hear all the time anecdotally from people about the fact that, oh, I love getting the magazine. I like to be able to pick it up and touch it and put it down and pick it up again. And it isn't just people that are my age saying that. I talk to younger people all the time that say, oh, yeah, I really enjoy getting it. I get it for free. I don't know. I never wanted to let you guys know that because I don't want you to stop sending it to me. And without realizing that was our model. That clearly the lion's share is online reading, and we're an audited publication, and we're seeing strength in readership each year when we do our audits. Digitally, we've got a decent amount of digital readers, but it's just a fraction of what we've got in terms of actual printed publication.
Interesting. I actually do the magazine because I'll use it when I go to sit at the pool or when I'm traveling on like an airplane or BART. It's just nicer than scrolling through on my phone for a story. I do like to touch, a magazine. Jeremy, what about you guys?
Yeah, I would say our experience is similar, though our print circulation, at least again in terms of Pleasanton Weekly, Palo Alto Weekly has a much larger print circulation than we do. But we're lower than what Barney described there for Diablo Magazine. But we really strive and we put editorial resources and others toward satisfying both, right? Interests that are both, for lack of a better word or phrase, customer base, readers. We hear from plenty of readers who I think follow breaking news from us online that they really prefer to sit down and read the Pleasanton Weekly on Friday or over the weekend. Our structure is we're delivered to the U.S. Postal Service. It should be in readers' mailboxes on Friday mornings. It's on the street side boxes Thursday afternoon. We have that side of the model, but we also have each of our three East Tri-Valley websites has an express email, get a digest of the news from the day before that goes out each of the 5 business days, right? We really do try to satisfy for those that read online or like to open the email in their inbox and click through on stories or calendar items or other trending news advertisements in that email of interest that they can do that. And it is still the situation where, at least on the journalism side, and particularly from many readers' expectation side, that we're the local authoritative voice on what's going on in their community. And that is not just 9 to 5, right? There are, with the major stories, the expectation that we have to balance, that we chase something after hours or on the weekend. And people look to us for that as well. And that's obviously different from the weekly print newspaper mentality.
Or the 8-time a year magazine where it's a different kind of.
We're not going to get into the news as it's occurring. We'll take issues and write about them and about what the issue itself is about, but we're not going to be breaking news or anything like that. And that's not really what we are. We're a nice compliment to what Jeremy's doing. And I think vice versa, because we really don't compete with each other in that respect.
You both operate in a very highly populated area, right? So it's easier to get those big readerships. Talk about the news media from your perspective overall, whether it's a magazine, lifestyles publication, or the local weeklies. How do they survive in places like Lake County you were talking about?
Yeah, and I don't want us to sleep on the fact that each year is very critical to us. Each year is critical to our ability to thrive, survive, and frankly, you don't make a conversion to nonprofit if you think the traditional business model is the way to sustain into the future. I'll speak from Lake County's perspective and just a note there that they are a media news group owned publication under the digital first media parent company, hedge fund, vulture capitalist hedge fund that owns Bay Area News Group, right? In Lake County, when I was there, obviously the only print publication in the whole county. So you get all those, for example, legal advertising sort of revenues, the things that have to by law be published in a newspaper of record in a jurisdiction. And that's a part of our business model as well. We're adjudicated in Alameda County for Pleasanton Weekly, same on the peninsula and in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties for our publications. It's a hard fought battle. And in those smaller communities, there are more and more stunning numbers, hundreds of counties in the country don't have any paper, any news publication of record anymore. Just what a shift it's been since the 80s and 90s. It's tough. But what Barney brought up before in terms of the brand recognition, the brand awareness, that's so vital for everybody. And that's something that we're really focused on in 2025 as an organization. You think of a community like Pleasanton, where there are plenty of old timers and generations of family, but how many of those residents, those new families that are coming in are new families or people that are coming in because of the jobs that they get here that they didn't have here a year ago, especially in our smaller markets? Do people circulating through these larger and larger apartment complexes, the new condos coming in, the senior housing that's coming in, do they know Danville San Ramon exists and what we do and how well we do it? The answer is more often is no. We have to really focus on brand awareness, and some of that is the name. But for me, on the journalism side, a key component of that is the quality and quantity of the journalistic work that we do. Being able to show that they can recognize us as the reliable source, not only for news, but community storytelling. I think that's one piece that we missed in our discussion earlier about the bigger publications moving out, and it's just us when we're beyond just reprinting press releases like some quote unquote competitors may do to get the headlines, right? It's really about what people want as much as the news of what's going on in their local government or the crash around the road or the big fire is the community storytelling.
Barney, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do think it's really tough in these smaller communities to have independent media. I think about when I was growing up in Pittsburgh, we had the Pittsburgh Post-Dispatch, the Antioch had the Antioch Ledger, there was the Concord Transcript, Walnut Creek, I don't remember what it was. Some of those fell under the umbrella of the Times, but there were so many newspapers out there, and slowly they got consolidated into one and then started disappearing. And how do you have your unique identity for your community that was separate from, of course, we got the Chronicle or the Tribune or whatever else was there. And I don't know I don't have an answer to it, but it is, to Jeremy's point, he's lived it firsthand. It is a challenge there. Jeremy's point about community, it really is. I think we both play, or organizations like ours really play a big part in reflecting the community that we operate in. And that's important for community identity. I think about the organizations that we work with that we sponsor, like their events through media sponsorships and doing outreach through our digital and print medium to tell their messages and tell about their events and do all of those sorts of things. And it really is, I'm not patting ourselves on the back. I'm just saying we're in that mix, which leads to greater successes for the organizations and just a sense of what we are as a community.
As we talk about that changing media locally in Walnut Creek, Barney, where I know you're out of, Pam Kessler from Walnut Creek Magazine passed away, and it seems that was a small, mostly her. I don't think anybody's picking that up. It doesn't seem like, I haven't seen it published or anything. Is that just, it's not a great business model and she was a driving force? Or not sure what I'm asking here, but just any thoughts you may have.
Yeah, I don't know. Pam certainly was dynamite at her job and was very involved in the community. And she did a print publication at one time and then went to the digital format and was really dynamic and did so much. I don't know if someone else is going to pick up the mantle and run with it. It was a shame to hear. I hadn't realized that Pam was even sick, so I was really surprised to hear that she had passed away. But to our points earlier, having other voices in the market's key and important. I hope that it doesn't go away. There are a few other publications that are out there.
One thing that, came to mind when going along that train of thought was, I mentioned a little bit up 680, now it's 780. I grew up in Benicia, Vallejo, and an interesting thing that came out of, they had the Vallejo Times Herald there, which again is under the Media News Group, downsizing their operations, selling their building, cutting staff, reducing the number of times it's in print per week, and obviously less local content online. But actually what's happened in the last 2 to 3 years could be an interesting set of folks for you to get into. But some of the journalists that, went through the Times Herald the last 2 or 3 years have founded the Vallejo Sun, really devoted on, and I believe they're a nonprofit, really devoted on local government coverage and investigative journalism. I think you're seeing that too with the Berkeley Scanner, right? Just a one-woman show focusing strictly on scanner news, the public safety stuff. But she's able to, I think, as she described it, I was at the CNPA conference last year, or the gala where she spoke. Again, a one-woman show relying on memberships to the website, and she's able to thrive journalistically in that model. But again, these are people who are journalists who probably either through attrition or layoffs or just morale got sick of the traditional business model and experience of journalism and have gone off on their own, focused on the community storytelling. And they're able to find readers to support them in community organizations as well in terms of advertising and otherwise.
A good perspective. Along the lines of the storytelling, what advice would you have starting with Jeremy and then Barney, about to give to young students, high school students that want to study journalism, college students, people coming out into the marketplace. What skills should they learn, and what advice do you have for them to be those storytellers of the future?
This is something that we face anytime we have a new hire cycle, or certainly with interns, but even new hires. We're often getting folk straight out of school and pretty green when it comes to day to day or even weekly newspaper journalism production. And I would think I'll say journalism schools are not doing us a great favor in that regard in terms of always churning out all the time folks who are ready to hop in on day one or day two into the journalism field. There's always a lot of local news going on, but what I would say brass tacks for those in school is much like any other industry, right? It's about reps, right? In college, or as you're just coming out of college, look for opportunities to get reps at doing what you want to do. Journalism school is great about the theory side of things, which I think is how it goes for a lot of fields of study in college. You really have to work on your own to get onto the school paper, the school website, or find internships to get those reps. But that's the way you get better. That's the way I get better. Even though I'm editorial director and have a lot of administrative duties, I still keep involved in writing. I have a weekly column, and I like to think that gets better by and large week to week by doing what it is that we do.
I would agree. And I think it's one of those things, even though generationally things change and technology changes, it's still just getting out there and doing the work. And you get people that are green and they go to J school and they learn all the things that they learn there, the schooling side of it. But then when you get in the job, it's boots on the ground. And I think to a point Jeremy made earlier about that, getting out there in the community and knowing it. I'm always talking with all the folks here that I work with that about networking and hearing the stories, because you don't know where a story is going to come from. And if you know the people that are out and about and involved locally, you're going to hear about those things. And it's so easy to get hidden behind a screen these days. And I think you really got to fight against that and really be a personality and a face in the field.
And I would encourage that for anybody, whatever career field. And I think you heard it from both of them. Go out and get the experience while you're in school. And I work on a couple of workforce initiatives for clients, and for the hotel industry, they're open 24 hours. So if you're going to school to learn about hospitality and tourism, get a job at night or on the weekends or around your school schedule at a hotel versus in retail or just any job. Get that hands-on experience. So when you come out, you're just so much more desirable and you learn different parts of the business. And it sounds like that's the same message you two are delivering here.
Absolutely. We've hired so many interns. We've hired them either in the editorial side or the marketing and the sales side, just because they got their feet wet here. They were ambitious, had the smarts, and they liked who we were, and it worked out very well.
Nice. Any final thoughts?
I think what's probably made Jeremy successful and his team, and I know with ours, is really a passion for local community and local involvement. Over the course of time, we've had people here that have gone on to work in San Francisco or New York in the publishing world and have enjoyed it. And I've had an opportunity to talk with them. It's been interesting because even though they're in a bigger pond, the things that they get out of their job is, again, touching people in their community. And I feel like I've been fortunate that I love the community I'm in and have had that opportunity to be involved. For all the years I've done this, it's never boring and never gets tiring because the same things happen just in a smaller pond as they do in the bigger one. It's a great place to be.
I do think one thing I'm trying to promote this year is my messaging to the community. If you're really interested in, I'll say our success, but really the ability to sustain, the ability to survive and thrive for a local news publication like ours, like Diablo Magazine, is that every little bit matters, right? Sign up to receive our paper, whether it's free or not in your area. Sign up for the newsletters. Click on a story. right? If you like a story, share it on social media or within your circles, right? If there's a news tip, something that you think you're not sure if we know about, reach out and tell us on the journalism side. If there's an ad that catches your eye in the paper or a coupon you use, digital offer online from one of our advertisers, when you go there, let them know that you saw their ad in our paper. Or if you go to a show because you read a profile that we wrote of the singer coming to town or our overview of what the Bankhead Theater is offering that month, mention it to the folks there. Tell your friends, because it all matters to us, small, medium, and large. Obviously, if you have the ability and interest to want to pay for our memberships, to want to donate to us, to donate substantial amounts of money, that's all very good. But the little stuff is just as critical to our success and those of our sources in terms of the stories, getting the stories out that they want told on the business side to the advertisers, our advertising clients, to know that their strategies are working and that we're part of that. Or as Barney talked about before, the nonprofits, maybe if you decide to support a group because of a story or a community advertisement or notice of a gala, we go to a gala because you read about it in our publication, let us know. Let those nonprofits know. It all matters.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly with that. It's interesting on the advertising side, when digital advertising started to become a thing, people were gravitating to it because you could get a concrete answer that X number of people clicked on an ad. And so then it was like, I can't tell if they're reading a magazine ad. But I can get this click through that tells me something. Now we're hearing clicks don't really matter and it's engagement and all kinds of different things that, you go back to that trusted voice sort of thing. If you got something that people trust and read, you got to feel like that they're getting the messages that come through, whether it be from editors or from advertisers. But it's so important for all of the people that benefit from those stories or ads or whatever, if they do take a second, say, hey, I read the Pleasanton Weekly or I read Diablo Magazine and noticed you were mentioned or were in there. I think that's really important, a real important point that Jeremy makes.
Yeah. And I know both these guys from being out and about in the community and seeing them at community events and hearing them is part of the conversation. So thank you guys for what you both do to tell the story of what's happening here in the East Bay.
Thank you, Jared.
Wait, don't leave yet. Hit subscribe. Make sure you get the weekly updates. We have a new episode every Wednesday for stuff happening in the East Bay. In the meantime, follow me on LinkedIn, Jared Asch, or check out our firm where we have a weekly newsletter and blog at Capstone Government Affairs on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us today on the Capstone Conversation.